All right, so go ahead and get started. Welcome to another Wellness Wednesday with the Student Health Center. My name is Marie Murray. I'm the Assistant Director for Health Education, and we've been doing these presentations all semester now. We're looking forward to giving you some more awesome content. Today we'll be talking about self-care and how self-care is kind of one of those buzzwords that's being talked about more and more, and why it's so important for you as a student, and then any faculty and staff that might be watching as well, why the self-care is so important. And we'll talk about some things that you can do to help your self-care. A little disclaimer, this presentation is actually created by one of our peer health educators, Jaden, and I'm looking forward to just being able to present this information to you. So I love to give definitions of what we're actually talking about, but I want to talk a little bit about what self-care actually is and what it means. And I think the biggest takeaway from this is that self-care is you taking action to improve your own health. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this, is that you are doing something that improves your overall wellness, happiness, well-being. So there's a bunch of language on here, but I think that's the biggest kind of thing to take away. And part of self-care is actually identifying what you enjoy. So what activities you enjoy doing, what fun you like to have, and actually integrating that and including it in your day or even your week. Maybe it's not something that time works that you can do it every day, but something that you do that actually promotes that positive health and well-being for you. So what do you actually, why do we need to practice self-care? Well, there's so many benefits to self-care, and I think this goes along with a lot of the conversations we've been having this semester when we talk about mental health and even some physical health stuff, is self-care has so many different benefits. One of them being energy. There's just so much positive and also restorative energy. I think there a lot of times we have, we sleep because we need to sleep, so we're rested. And that really, and part of self-care kind of brings you that, when we say restorative, it brings just some of that like positive, you actually feel like well-rested kind of energy, which I think is just different from you going to bed, waking up and going, oh, okay, I got out of bed again. So I think that's kind of the difference than just saying it has a lot of positive energy. Another thing is self-care brings better performance. And I think a lot of it goes along with, if we're practicing self-care and we are, again, doing things that are fun, doing things that matter to us, we just tend to get that, it's kind of that positive thinking that brings a little bit of that positive mentality. And sometimes we just tend to perform better because we either feel like we're doing really awesome things and we're getting that value, or, we're just performing better because we're doing something that we love. This kind of goes along with, if you are doing something that you love, it may not be a job, it may not be work, because it's just you doing something you love. Might have better decision making. So again, and this goes along with the next one, which is having a clear mind. Is you can make better decisions if you've got a little bit more of a clear mind. Maybe with practicing self-care, you're getting rid of some of those worries and some of that anxiety, so you can focus on things that are really important to you. And then I'm going to combine these next two, which is good physical and mental health, just because, and I think the message I've been giving throughout the whole semester is that physical and mental health are very much linked. And we need to keep in mind that they're linked, and there's so much positive things from that. If we can practice self-care, we might actually be improving both of them at the same time, because physical activity can actually improve your mental health. And mental health can actually improve how you feel physically. And then the last one is their confidence. By just doing things that we love, we feel more confident in who we are. So I think that's really important to kind of highlight. If we're not practicing self-care, so we talked a lot about the benefits, but a lot of times if we're looking at not doing self-care, sometimes we have that. I think this one's so important, compassion fatigue. If we're not caring for ourselves, sometimes it's really hard to care for other people. And I feel like that sounds really harsh, but this is why it's, we talk about self-care so much, and we talk about why self-care is so important for mental health, because you do have to take care of yourself. You cannot, I tell everybody all the time in my stress management presentations, you can't give 100% of yourself if the 100% doesn't even exist. And then you also can't, and the flip side of that, give 150%. So just something kind of keep in mind. Along with that is stress. If you're not practicing self-care, you're not taking care of yourself, you may feel more stress, and you may feel the stress mentally, you may feel the stress physically, it may be both. Along with that is illness. Constantly being stressed and not taking care of ourselves can, a lot of times at the student health center, we see students, and it tends to be around like midterms, finals times, when that's all, they're just thinking about all the stress and all the things they have to study for. They're not necessarily taking care of themselves. Some other things that actually can impact our quality of work, whether it's your job performance or it's academic performance, is if you don't practice self-care, and this goes along with stress management, and the two are kind of linked, is you might have poor decision making, you might have poor performance. To go even further into that, some people may suffer from depression, or even anxiety around it, because we're not necessarily handling those emotions. And then we also might deal with social isolation, and low self-esteem, as well. So those are a lot of things that if we're not practicing self-care, we can feel from. So with that being said, I saw that someone's kind of listening while they're moving, so I'm not going to ask you, necessarily, it may be hard for you to kind of hop in here, but I would love some feedback, whether it's later on when you're rewatching this video, or if you go, we have a social media post going right now, and we're looking for people to actually show us what you as students are doing to practice self-care. So please, by all means, hop over to Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, and share, what you're doing to practice self-care. We've got a giveaway going on with that. So I want to give you the opportunity, especially because we do have one participant that's here, and that you might be a little bit busy. But whether you pop it in the chat, you can share it if you're at a good stopping point, or you unmute yourself really quick. I'll give you a second if you'd like to share. But I'll tell you guys, one of the things that I like to do for me is, one, I play video games. It's something I can do by myself or with friends. But the other thing that I like to do is I go fishing. It's really, really peaceful to be out on the lake, whether it is a good fishing day or a bad fishing day. We always say that just getting out of the house and getting on the lake is so enjoyable and so worth it. So we'll continue, we'll keep moving on. But like I said, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, drop a comment of what you do to practice self-care, or head over to our social media. It's just LU Health Education, and share what you're doing to practice self-care, because we love student feedback, and we want to know. But please share your self-care moments. So what does it look like when self-care is in action? I really like the circle of self-care, because I think this is something that everybody here can actually do, is they can make a pie chart, and they can break it up into what they're doing for self-care and how much of it they want to kind of include into their daily life. So I'll go through our list, and then I'll talk a little bit about how the pie graph actually shows a lot of really good, simple ways of how that kind of translates. So first things first is know who you are as a person and know your limits. And so this kind of goes back to the statement of where I said you can't give 150% of yourself, and you can't give 100% of yourself if it doesn't exist. So know where you're at, knowing maybe when you need to say no, knowing when you need to delegate. Those are actually some really simple ways for you to take care of yourself without even necessarily realizing it. The other big one, and you see this is the big chunk on this little circle of self-care pie graph, is this getting the sleep you need, and then also knowing how to rest. Because we can sleep, but it may not be restorative sleep. It may not be, are you getting the REM sleep? Maybe you need something or a trick to help you fall asleep. So it might be something that you get calm and you listen to some sort of sound. Those are all things that you can kind of help you fall asleep. And that's a whole other presentation, and we've done that before, so please feel free to go back and look at that. But I can't tell you how big sleep is important for self-care, and it's sometimes the thing that we overlook because we're so stressed out. Another thing is to feed your body and soul. And I think this is so important because this goes back to the fact that physical health is so important, and it's very much linked to the mental health. Uh, but the other piece to this is that there's just so many ways for you to personalize this. So, feeding your soul could be something like, if you go back to the little pie graph, that's mindful breathing and yoga. Is feeding your soul something that you do where it's just you find quiet time for yourself to do something? Or is feeding your soul reading a book, or just reading the newspaper? Or is it feeding your soul by attending church, and that's your peaceful time to reflect on your religion, your religious beliefs? However you do that, like whether it's by yourself or with a group of people, how do you feed your soul? And then with your body, feeding your body, that can be the literal, taking, again, self-care, taking care of our nutrition. What are we eating? Are we putting the right things in our body? A lot of times we might feel like we're eating something to make us feel good, but if it's, maybe fast food that's really fatty, you might actually feel worse after eating it. So really, making the effort to eat healthy regularly, you'd be surprised how much that feeding your body can actually be a really good self-care tool. Finding a way to decompress throughout your day. I always recommend kind of creating, even if it's just a simple nighttime routine, and in your nighttime routine, so not just the brushing your teeth, washing your face, changing into your PJs. Is there something that you do, right before bed that gives you time? Just whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 30 minutes, whether it's just an hour that you veg out watching TV, whatever it is there something that you do for you that's, you don't have to think? It's just something to help you decompress and release everything. And it could be something where you are putting effort into it, where you're reading, or maybe you're journaling, or it could just be the passive, like I'm gonna put on Netflix, I'm gonna binge a Netflix show for an hour, whatever you want to do. And then knowing how to decompress after a day's work, right? So that was that decompress after a day's work, but are there simple ways that you can do it? Are there the big chunks of time after the end of the day? So there's a couple different things. I would also include in there, how do you decompress at the end of a week, right? Sometimes we don't get that throughout your day, and we don't get the end at the end of a work day. Is there a way that you can fit in decompressing? And by decompress, I just mean finding a way to kind of let all that stress and anxiety of the day, of the week go. Or is there just some, breathing technique that you use? Maybe you just had a stressful meeting, or you just, did a stressful presentation. Is there something that you can do right afterwards to help you? So all really useful things to kind of help with the self-care. I can't tell you, like, talk about like bubble baths, right? It's like, that's a really good me time thing, right? Throw a bubble bath, or even just a hot shower. Those are all different ways you can do that. And then the last one is just knowing how to treat yourself well. So if you saw what our social media piece is, and we're going to do that here in a second, is how are you treating yourself, whether it's the mental or the physical? And I talked about the physical, but when we're talking about the mental, and I'm going to fast forward to this next slide, and we're going to talk about self-affirmations. And I think self-affirmations is so important, and I loved that Jaden put this in here, is how are we framing how we talk to ourselves? So self-care isn't just the taking care of the physical and, practicing the stress relief. It's what are we doing to positively influence ourselves every day? What are we doing to maintain that positive mentality? And I think a lot of us can think of that one person that's always the positive Polly, I think is what it's called. But you think of that one person who's kind of like your cheerleader type, and he's always going to be the positive, like rah rah. And we all kind of need a little bit of that for self-care in ourselves. And so I think this back quote is like, be the best version of you, is a really good mantra that you can kind of, put somewhere. But there's some simple self-affirmations we can give ourselves. And I like, so there's two things down here, which is I can practice self-care and I will practice self-care. Guess what? Those are positive self-affirmations. And what goes along with positive self-affirmations is recognizing maybe when we're putting ourselves down too. And so a lot of times we tell ourselves that we maybe can't do something. And so I like that these are phrases, I can and I will. So whenever you catch yourself saying that you can't do something, And is it recognizing, is it literally something that you can't do, whether it's I can't, if I can't buy this, right? Okay, well, you can't buy it because you don't have money. Or is it I can't do something, just you being like, oh, well, I don't think I can do that. Maybe I don't have the skills, or I don't feel like I have the knowledge. Is recognizing is that maybe you can do it, and you probably can do it, and recognizing that you can and you will, and you're going to conquer it. It's so important to recognizing that so a lot of times we do tell ourselves that we can't do something, and we actually can. And so kind of reframing the negative self-speak per se, and into that positive self-affirmations. And this was part of our activity that was on our social media as well. So, please, whether you're watching this, again, this is another thing that you can drop in a comment, or you can go share on our social media. But I would love to hear some feedback of some self-affirmations. Maybe it's not something you've used before, but maybe you can think of a time where you're like, oh my God, I said this to myself, and that was negative, and here's how I can reframe it into a positive. That's a really good thing to kind of practice by dropping in a comment. So please do that. I highly recommend it. Again, love to see what you guys are doing and taking away from these presentations. So thank you. The basis behind self-affirmations and continuing this conversation is it's literally just one positive thought at a time. The idea is that you want to encourage yourself to think positively about all of the important things in your life. And so what I mean by that is think positively about your life, your vision, your family, your career, even your hobbies. Don't let that negative thought and self-doubt convince you any other way. Is just always constantly telling yourself and encouraging yourself. Like, you mentally want to encourage yourself that you can do something or you can be something, right? And so, we always talk to little kids about what your dream job is, right? And we want to encourage. We always encourage young kids, like, yes, you can do this if you work hard, and you want to be that positive cheerleader to yourself. It's not just other people, it's to yourself. And so I've got a lovely long list, and I will not go through all of them, but I really want to kind of point out different variations of what a daily affirmation can be and what it kind of looks like. It can be something as simple as saying, I am successful. Or it can be something as like, I am strong, I am powerful, right? Or it can be something as like, I'm a living, breathing example of motivation, or I feel like I'm having a positive and inspiring impact on the people I come into contact with. Like, that's a longer one. That's like really telling yourself, like, this is the impact I'm having, and I'm really actually doing something. Or it can be something as simple as like, today is a phenomenal day. Today is an awesome day. Today I am rocking it. These are all different ways that you can just bring those positive emotions and those daily affirmations. And again, what makes these affirmations work is that you feel them and you believe in them, and you really give them a shot. We're going to have those bad days, but sometimes it's an affirmation might not even be recognizing something that you did. It's maybe recognizing just a positive out of a bad day. So we always have those days where they're just bad days, but there might be something that you can help turn it around, right? If the day started off really well and you're like, oh, I can pull from that. Like, I mean, I had my coffee, I was rocking, and then everything just went sideways. But guess what? There was still a positive there. Like, you started off the day fantastic, right? Or maybe a day started off really, not getting with it. Like, I always say there's like, we have the Mondays, but maybe the day picked up and you're like, oh man, I accomplished all of this stuff. And I got all this stuff today, despite like the day just kind of getting off to a rough start. Those are all different ways that you can provide yourself that positivity in those daily affirmations. So that's the end of my presentation. As far as content-wise, I always leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. If anybody has any questions they'd like to ask, again, I'll go back and I'll review. So if you're watching this afterwards and you want to drop a question in the description of the YouTube, or you go back, message us on social media. We look at that regularly. based on these posts, like please feel free to ask us questions. My email's in here. If you pre-registered through LU Hub, you'll get a survey after this. So please complete the survey for watching, or on YouTube, I'll drop the link and you can complete it individually. But I appreciate you for being here. It's 12:52, so we always try to actually end in about 20 minutes. So I appreciate you for being here. I saw we had somebody participate. So again, thank you for attending, and we will see you at our next Wellness Wednesday. Thank you very much.